Looks like we got ourselves a bad man right here.
Horizon: An American Saga is the first of 4 planned Western epics directed by Kevin Costner. Only 2 of them have been shot and scheduled for release, and the fate of the remaining entries seems uncertain. In case that sounds just like Zack Snyder's ill-conceived Rebel Moon project, the comparison is apt. Costner's overarching plan far supersedes anything that ends up on screen in Horizon, and at a languid 3 hours in length, the first chapter is a major misfire. Set during the lead up to the American Civil War, Horizon attempts to recreate the feel and enormous scale of classic Hollywood westerns. It performs a fitting visual impression in some regards, but right from the start, the Yellowstone star and Dances with the Wolves director seems intent on both reviving and refuting the genre. Horizon doesn't reconcile or even wrestle with that tension. Instead, it simply recognizes it in dialogue, while the visuals long for bygone eras of movie making.
No army of this earth is going to stop those wagons coming, little as they're wanted.
The story is spread across multiple subplots, unfolding far apart from one another, each with a colossal cast that does their level best to maintain interest. A brief but by no means comprehensive rundown of those plots and characters. In Wyoming, a peaceful makeshift town of white Christian families, a settlement named Horizon, sold to its residents as a new promised land, is attacked by a ruthless Apache tribe and their fanatical young leader, Pionsene.
Get him out of here! Get in there, quick!
Elsewhere, in a frigid Montana mining town, the scheming Sykes brothers are on a mission to track down their father's mistress, Ellen, and retrieve their baby half-sibling. It's here where Costner makes his on-screen appearance an hour into the movie as a lone gunman, Hayes Ellison. Like clockwork, the 2-hour mark reveals a third story and a third set of characters in the form of a wagon train headed for Horizon and headed up by pioneer Matthew Von Whedon.
All I'm trying to do is get as many of us as I can, as far as I can.
At this point, it starts to feel like this material was better suited for hour-long TV drama. The Siege of Horizon is a blazing sequence with all the melodrama of Titanic, and even some callbacks to its musical score, but it doesn't lay enough emotional foundation to fully click. There's a viciousness to the way Costner films the town's native attackers, who indiscriminately slaughter white children, and while he attempts to eventually provide some level of dimension to these events, the images and the Western cliches they embody are hard to shake. It's a particularly retrograde depiction, especially disappointing to see in a post-Killers of the Flower Moon world.
When this money started coming, we should have known it came with something else.
And when Costner eventually tries to subvert it, his limited dramatic framing doesn't do Horizon any favors. Rather than offering his native characters a more complex humanity, his solution is simply more screen time without the necessary nuance. This results only in more close-ups of the handful of Apache who silently, stoically disagree with Pionsene and of their peers whose bloodlust remains their primary trait. Costner maintains a wistfulness for Western expansion. The settlers of Horizon are mostly duped into buying land to which they have no legal or cultural rights, leading to the movie's bloody hostilities. Among the town's survivors are Frances Kitteridge and her daughter Elizabeth, who are rescued and looked after by kindly members of the Union Army like First Lieutenant Trent Geppard. Geppard takes over the role of hero from the traditional cowboy, albeit in the most boring possible manner. Informing the people of Horizon, and those of us in the audience, of their predicament, Geppard speaks from a modern perspective about the rights of the indigenous. That's a more respectful term today, but one that feels anachronistic coming from a Union soldier on horseback. In the process, he inadvertently helps contextualize the brewing clash with Pionsene and, as an inevitability, caused by some unseen conman rather than by racist policies and beliefs. In Horizon, the primary victim of encroachment on native lands is fragile white innocence, as embodied by the romanticism with which Costner captures Frances and Elizabeth. In attempting to correct the myths perpetuated by classic westerns, Horizon creates one of its own, turning Manifest Destiny into a big ol' manifest oopsie. The movie reinforces the racism it tries to correct, but that's not its biggest flaw. That would be the boring and banal storytelling. It's a particularly talkative Western, despite the odd shootout here and there, and the occasional landscape shot reminiscent of how the West was won. Its conversations often go in circles, gesturing towards the Civil War and Apache settler skirmishes in scenes that go on for far too long without revealing new bits of information or character. The white supremacist notions at the heart of both conflicts are barely glanced at. Worse yet, the film has the gall to not even feature an actual conclusion to any of its stories, or even the less desirable option of a cliffhanger. Instead, with its characters no closer to crossing paths, it ends with a literal trailer for what's to come, teasing a darker second chapter that looks far more intriguing than anything in the preceding film. Horizon plays in the process like a massive screw you to anyone who has the nerve to spend 3 hours being lulled to sleep by Costner's noxious cinematic nostalgia. It's a movie that harkens back to the past, and that's where it ought to have been left.
Men will come try you. They will take from you until you are wiped clean from this land.
The first of a possible 4 Western epics, Kevin Costner's Horizon and American Saga Chapter 1 is a throwback that tries and fails to reckon with the genre's ugly history. By the time the film ends, its 3 storylines are nowhere close to intersecting. Heck, one of them doesn't even get started until the 2-hour mark, with scenes that linger well past their welcome and a muddled perspective on the past told through boring, verbose filmmaking. The project is practically dead on arrival. For more movie reviews, check out what we thought of Inside Out 2 and Bad Boys Ride or Die. And for everything else, stick with IGN.